Hey, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all in this truth from the well. Peace, salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Until I say shalom. Coming to you back with another lesson through the Spirit. And the title for this is going to be the mirth of this place is through. Because ultimately we know that this economy of Babylon the Great, which is America, is dying. And what that's leading to is for people to have less money to just spend, because we're I'm not gonna say we're coming into those times, but we're in those times where people aren't able to afford rent, aren't able to afford groceries. Some people are having to opt out either to pay their rent or grocery. You got a lot of people homeless, living in their cars while having jobs. And that's just letting you know the state that this economy, this country, the great America, the great United States of America is in. Because we know that this devil, the self-proclaimed white man, is collapsing his economy to make way for that new CBDC system is going to be ran by the digital currency, whatever name they're going to put on it. It's all going to come out soon, but we know that this is a planned demolition. It isn't just random that inflation is at an all-time high, constantly going up from day to day. You got gold at an all-time high, silver at an all-time high, Bitcoin at an all-time high. These are all different signs that this dollar is about to collapse. That's why the people are in the state they're in. They're mourning because now they can't stretch out their dollar. They really can't go out and go out to get some food, go to these restaurants. Hell, even going to fast food. Now even going to fast food, that's a luxury. Because you pull up to McDonald's or Popeyes, you try to get a meal, it'll run you almost $30. So people are opting out to spend money just for no reason like they used to back in the day. Because back in the day when people used to have all this extra money laying around, they went to the malls, they went to the restaurants, to the nightclubs, to the bars. But that's dying out. And that's why these people are in that state of mourning, because now the mirth is getting wiped out because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is getting ready to destroy this place. But first, he's plaguing it. He's plaguing the mind of these people. He's taking away all the things that once brought him comfort, from the bread and circus, the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, to these different movies. The music is trash now. The holiday spirit is dead. Christmas, you got a lot of people saying Thanksgiving and Christmas isn't the same. Halloween isn't the same. Ultimately, because Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is taking the spirit out of this place, because he's going to destroy it. But yet these people can't see that. They're hoping for that spark to start up again so they can go out and celebrate their pagan holidays, go out and have a good old happy time and forget about the cares of this world. But ultimately, the prophecies are speaking loud and clear. World War III, martial law, Jacob's trouble. But yet people can't see it. Their hope is for this place to bounce back and so they can continue in their folly. Ultimately, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is going to put a stop to all this folly, all this mirth, and he's putting a stop to it now. But how much more when all hell breaks loose, the dollar collapses, these people's bank accounts get wiped out, they're going to completely bug out. And they're really going to have no comfort. Because a lot of people right now, even though they're losing their jobs, they can't pay rent, they can't buy certain things that they used to, certain wants. Maybe now they can only get their needs. But soon, they're not going to be able to escape their problems. They're not going to be able to go get a bottle, to go to the pharmacy and hop on their meds and go to the weed plug and get some blunts, put on Netflix and forget about the world. No, Soon, Yahweh Shema Shai is going to take that all away, and these people are going to be completely naked with no covering. Then they're going to try to seek that comfort, especially 2/3 of Jake. They're going to try to seek that comfort. They're going to try to seek that stability, but ultimately they're not going to find it. Only the elect are going to have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to what's going on and why it's happening. Like it says in Isaiah chapter 33 and verse 6. This is Jeremiah chapter 25 and verse 10. Moreover, I will take from them the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, and the sound of the millstones and the light of the candle. So all these different things are getting taken away. You know, people aren't in that optimist spirit no more, because a lot of people were hoping for this president, this Donald Trump, Nero, to somehow make America quote unquote great again. You know, fix everything that the Biden administration did. You know, lower inflation, lower gas prices. You know, have peace talks with all these different countries that the U.S. has been in war with for years. But no, ultimately what this devil, Donald Trump, is doing, he's just making things worse. Now people are mourning, sighing, and crying because that was their only hope. But now that hope has been taken away, and now people are really in that spirit of mourning. But a lot of people are faking it. You know, they're faking a funk. They have a fake smile in their face. You know, but ultimately that's all going to be wiped out very soon. And it's being wiped out right now. You know, people are in fear because the government is telling people to stay on high alert from the T attacks, you know, from these sleeper cells. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 3. And it reads, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the grinding is ceasing. You got mass layoffs, all these different jobs being replaced by AI. You got people not being able to pay their rent, you know, being evicted. You got Eve, her Section 8 is being taken away, all the different welfare benefits that she had from her daddy Esau. The self-proclaimed white man is being taken away. All the different DEI jobs that Jake had in these different corporations, these different jobs, they're being taken away. But ultimately, that's Yahweh Shema Shai put it upon the spirit, upon the mind of Esau, Edom, the self-proclaimed white man, to collapse this economy, because it's making way for that MOTB, that micro C-hip, that Jake is going to be begging for to so-called make everything normal again. But we know that nothing has been normal ever since 2020. Everything has just gone to shit. You know, but Jake's still hoping for that hope, you know, for that spark that somehow the economy is going to bounce back. That's why it says those that look out of the windows be dark, and that's going into the optimism in this place is being wiped out. You know, people don't really have a foreseeable future. You know, retirement age is rising. Now you gotta work till you're 70. You know, damn, you gotta work till you're 70 to get your pension or your 401k. And we know that that's all bullshit. Ultimately, Esau, he's trying to kill you off before you can even touch that pension or that 401k. That's why you got a lot of people who so-called, you know, retired. Now they're having to work these jobs to be able to pay their rent just to make ends meet. Verse 4, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low, and the grinding is low. A lot of jobs are cutting hours. People built a lifestyle based off how many hours they work, you know, pre 2020, you know, before the C-demic happened, before the vid-19. You know, people built lives based off how much they were spending back then, but now that they're not getting that same income, that same cash flow, now people are having to start cut certain things off. You know, it's starting to cut meals off. You know, people are skipping meals just to pay their rent. You know, having to sell their houses. A lot of people are getting evicted. All the nice whips, the nice cars that they bought, now they're getting repoed. ultimately, these are all signs that this economy is collapsing. That's why these people are in that spirit of mourning. And even the different ways of escaping their so-called reality, or their reality, misery, that's dying out too. The music is trash. It's becoming more trash as the years go by. These movies are just terrible. They don't have any new ideas. There are new ways of just making remakes of old movies. These sports, they're getting more blatant obvious that it's all rigged, but yet people are still indulging in this scripted reality. This is Isaiah 24 and verse 7. The new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, the merry-hearted do sigh. So that new wine, these philosophies of Babylon, the American dream, going to college, getting a job. You graduate college, you get a career, you get a high-paying job, you get the house with the white picket fence, you marry your wife and have some children, you get the dog, you get the nice car, the Porsche, vacations. That's all dead. The American dream is dead. And now these people are starting to realize that Edom sold them a dream, which majority of people could never attain. Especially Jake, our own people, the nation of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. A lot of Jake, they wasted their whole lives to chase that American dream. But now that they're starting to realize that it was all bullshit, now they're mourning. And those Jake that did get the so-called American dream, a lot of them sold out. These different celebrities, these rappers, these actors, these ball players, they had to do wickedness to get that so-called bag. They had to bend down to this devil. They had to sacrifice their family members. Even them that obtained those so-called riches, that corruptible crown, now they're starting to realize that it wasn't worth it. That's why they're constantly on drugs, alcohol. You always see them with shades on. They're always buying material things to fill that void that ultimately that they tried to fill with attaining all these corruptible riches, but ultimately now they know that it wasn't worth it. But it's too late. They're way too deep, especially like all these Diddy's, these Kanye's. Verse 8, the mirth of the tabret ceaseth, the noise of them that rejoice endeth, the joys of the harp ceaseth. Verse 9, they shall drink wine with a song, strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. And all these different nightclubs, these clubs, these bars, these venues, they're dying out. A lot of people aren't willing to go out and spend hundreds of dollars just to have a so-called good time. When you could just stay your ass in the crib and just be enjoy your own company instead of going around these demons, these YNs, Keisha with her funky ass, these 2/3 Jakes. That's why a lot of these clubs and these venues are dying, because now people are starting to realize, it's all bullshit. Especially men, they're starting to realize that spending money on these hoes, on these thoughts, isn't worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze. That's why a lot of people just aren't out and about like they used to, especially because inflation is going up. Verse 10, Isaiah 24 and 10, the city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up, that no man may come in. Verse 11, there is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is dark, and the mirth of the land is gone. And what's that city of confusion? America, Babylon the Great. That word Babel means confusion. That's why everything around here is just confusion. You got women over men. You got these moles, these alphabet agendas just walking out and about. You got YNs just deleting each other. It's all confusion. You walking down the street and you see a thing and you don't know if it's a man or a woman. That's all confusion. That's ultimately why Yahweh Shemiel Shai is putting a stop to this madness. He's taking the mirth out of America and out of the whole world, really, because Yahweh Shemiel Shai is collapsing this system through his left hand, Esau, Edom, Satan, the self-proclaimed white man, to make room for that new NWO. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 2. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. So that's the mindset that the elect, us of the hopeful elect, are in. We're not in the mindset of mirth, having a good old time 24/7. Yeah, brothers may, in their downtime, on the weekends, have some yayan, some drink. But ultimately, we're not in that spirit of wanting for this place to continue like these 2/3 Jakes, these heathens are in. Their mindset is, oh, America's going to be healed. We're going to be here for the rest of our lives. This is as good as it gets. That's the mindset of Jake. And these heathens. This is as good as it gets. Working a 9 to 5, working for Esau, eating McDonald's. That's as good as it gets for Jake. And ultimately, we know that we have something better coming, which is the kingdom of heaven. Which that's really what we're looking forward to. Not to continue here another 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however long it may be. Verse 3, sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the countenance, the heart is made better. So a lot of people out here, you see it in their countenance, they're proud, but that pride is being wiped away. And even us have the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of what's really going on. We're not out here just walking proud, with our nose to the sky. Yeah, we move with confidence, but a lot of people are out here, they're faking the front. Fake ass smile, fake ass confidence, full of pride, but ultimately that pride is being wiped out. Pride comes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall, and that's what's happening to these people. They were so prideful, full of that pride, thinking that this place was never going to collapse, that it is never going to collapse, the World War III is never going to go full on. That's the mindset of these people. That's ultimately where right now, they're laughing and cracking jokes. And when that Third World War goes into full effect, that laughter is going to turn into sorrow, and then the sorrow for the elect is going to turn into laughter. We're going to laugh at these 2/3 and these heathens, laugh at their calamities and all the times they were scoffing and mocking, mocking the men of the Lord, mocking the prophets of Yahweh Bashim Shai. Verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fools is in the house of mirth. That's the spirit the majority of these people are in the house of mirth, having a good old time 24/7. But ultimately, that's being taken away. That's why right now they're starting to, change their attitude. They're being humbled. But ultimately, we know that majority of these people, they're not going to repent to Yahweh Bashim Shai of the nation of Israel here in America. That's why they're going to have to be destroyed and be brought back to the loins of the elect. Because even though Yahweh Bashim Shai is putting an end to this mirth, people are still proud. Why is a mortal proud? That 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 7. And to you who are troubled, rest with us when the Lord Yahweh Shai shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels. So that's ultimately our hope. We're prisoners of hope, prisoners to be delivered out of this captivity. We don't want to stay in this captivity for another 20, 30, 50 years like the rest of these 2/3. Jake wants to stay here. They want to continue to dwell in their folly, continue going to these nightclubs and these bars and do wickedness. That's the spirit that Jake is in. They don't want this place to end, but ultimately Yahweh Bashim Shai is putting an end to this mirth, putting an end to this place, putting an end to America. But even us, they have to be in the midst of it all. We have the hope of salvation. We have the hope of being delivered out of this upcoming destruction. The kingdom of heaven to look forward to. Majority of Jake isn't looking forward to that. Verse 8, in flaming fire taking vengeance of them that know not the Most High, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Yahweh Shai Mashiach. So ultimately, majority of Jake is in that spirit of mirth, partying all the damn time, Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to come like a thief in the night. Because when the doors of repentance were open, you know, for them to get right, to get out of that folly spirit, they chose instead to stay in the house of mirth. That's ultimately why Yahweh Shemel Shai is going to destroy them. Because when it was time to get serious, they were out here playing games. You know, but that's pretty much the point. Praises is edifying to the elect. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kabudash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, who all learned this truth from the well. Peace and salutations to the 144,000, the rest of the 1/3, the large multitude. Until I say shalom.